We're going to hear now from Judge Ruben Reyes, who serves as the judge of the 72nd District Court of Lubbock and Crosby Counties. He is a graduate of Yale University and Baylor Law School. In addition to his regular duties and responsibilities, Judge Reyes presides over the Lubbock County Adult Drug Court Program. He is the past chairman of the Board of Directors for the National Association of Drug Court Professionals and chairman of the Governor's Specialty Courts Advisory Council. Please join me in welcoming Judge Reyes.
Good morning. It's cold in here. I got 2 shirts and a coat, and I'm still cold. All right, let's begin here. See if I can figure this thing out. Okay, specialty courts. Yeah. At a mental health conference. Yeah. Why? Maybe you don't know what specialty courts are. Maybe you don't care what specialty courts are, but you do know that this is the last session between you and lunch. All right? So we're gonna go through a few things that will hopefully enable you to get a little something out of this presentation, because the audience in this group is strikingly similar to the audience when we have our state drug court conference or we have our national drug court conference. You have judges, you have prosecutors, you have defense lawyers, you have treatment providers, you have law enforcement, you have probation, you have court. It goes on and on and on. So I feel like I'm at home with you guys. My intent is to give you a little something that applies to each of your different disciplines. Let's begin by talking a little bit about crime. This is a Texas crime clock that's put out by law enforcement here. And the thing that I want to highlight to you is down here at the bottom, 1 violent crime every 4 minutes. I don't know if that'll go there. Yeah, right there. And down here, 1 property crime every 41 seconds. Folks, we live in a dangerous society. That's just the way it is. Let's talk about this. Car wrecks. Related to, this is only alcohol. I want to stress that because I've got a point that I'm going to make to y'all about drugged driving here momentarily. But roughly 27% of our fatal accidents are due to DUIs. Ironically, it seems to match, I don't know why, 27% of the total fatalities are due to DUIs. That's an interesting statistic. Let's look at this. Drugged driving for the first time in our nation's history surpassed drunk driving. I can get this. There we go. Okay. We have several states where marijuana is being legalized. It's being legalized for medical purposes. It's being legalized for recreational purposes. And this is something that I learned. I got an email just this past week. The Highway Loss Data Institute and the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety issued a joint report that says car crashes in general have increased by 6% when comparing 4 states where marijuana is legalized versus 4 states where it is not legalized. The storm is coming on this. Take a look at this slide. Across our nation, we have a trend that is developing. And it's here. The discussion is happening. The debates are happening. And I just gave a presentation at Texas Tech University to some of the student body And I said, let's talk about marijuana, let's talk about legalization, let's talk about decriminalization, because a lot of times people confuse those topics, and they're not the same. And I want you to be aware of some information so that you can discuss it, debate it intelligently, because that's part of the college experience, okay? Now, we don't have time to go into that for this presentation, but what I want to stress to you is times are changing, views are changing, attitudes are changing, and I will share with you at the end, because this is going to be made available to you, several websites that have a lot of information should you want to go there. One that I did not put and I neglected to is one that I'm going to tell you about right now. It's called SAM, Smart Approaches to Marijuana. It's at learnaboutsam.org. Learnaboutsam.org. It is an amazing website that gives you great information as these things come up. Canada just legalizing marijuana this past week. There was a white paper on that at the website, and just good information. So let's talk about this. Some of this will look familiar to y'all. This is a substance abuse portion from a pre-sentence investigation report. And the thing that I want to highlight here is the age at when somebody started using stuff. Okay? It's right underneath that yellow circle. So alcohol at age 12. Cocaine at age 12. Marijuana at age 10. Is anybody surprised that we are seeing this person in the adult criminal justice system? Because this is what was presented to the court as a result of the pre-sentence investigation to say, Judge, here's information, here's evidence you need to consider in sentencing this individual. They started behind the 8 ball from the beginning. So you've got to be asking, what kind of parents create an atmosphere where a kid is drinking and drugging at that age? Well, if you're like me, you're going to show your age, because now the question is, why do you assume parents are in the picture? Because a lot of our kids don't have parents in the picture. And this is what we got. A couple of other statistics I'm going to share with you guys. The United States represents about 5% of the world's population, yet we incarcerate about 25% of the world's prison population. Our stats, we represent about a quarter of the world's prison population. And look at the expense. Annually, $80 billion. Do we have a deficit? Yeah. Because we spend $80 billion from the very beginning to incarcerate people. It is a serious problem, and it warrants attention. I'm not going to read these. You guys can read for yourself. I try to make these slides so that you can get the gist of it. Here's something else. We know that because people have substance abuse disorders, some they just abused drugs, when they go to prison, they don't get treatment. We know that. We also know that treatment without accountability is not effective. And what happens is, after release, guess what? They go back to committing crime. They go back to abusing drugs or using drugs. That is the cycle that exists. Unless you have it supervised by a judge, it just doesn't take. That's what we're dealing with. That's what you're dealing with. Okay? So this is what generated, in 1989, Miami-Dade County, Florida, a discussion of people similar to this audience. Judges, law enforcement, treatment professionals said, we're seeing the same people over and over and over again. what we are doing does not work. We've got to change what we're doing. And so in 1989, as a pilot program, specialty courts, but they weren't called specialty courts. Really, that's a term we call them in Texas. A drug court was brought together to say, let's try something different. And it brought together the judge, a coordinator, the DA to ensure public safety, the defense attorney to ensure due process, and if there were kids involved, it brought people from the Child Protection Services Division, and really anybody else that might have input. Treatment providers, we need them here because they're the experts to say, okay, I'm telling you, this is what's going on, and this is the treatment response that we need to have. I'll tell you, because these courts are not that old, when I was in private practice about 16, 17 years, and then I got on the bench, and now I'm going on about 12 years. So 12 years ago, I had a coordinator come to me and said, hey, Judge Reyes, would you cover drug court? Never heard of them, didn't know what they were, and I thought, well, this is something else as a baby judge I need to learn how to do, okay? So I covered drug court, and I'm going to tell you how they work here momentarily. Loved it. Oh my gosh. I got a chance to speak edification to people, to say, you know what? You've made a mistake, but it's okay. We're here to help you. I loved it so much that I went to the judge who presided over the drug court and I said, if you ever want to give it up, if you ever need a break, if you just ever need a fill-in, let me know. 2 years later, he came to me and said, I need a break. Would you take it over? And so now I've been the drug court judge in Lubbock for going on 10 years. I have a colleague of mine who says, Ruben, you have really drank the Kool-Aid on this stuff. And for a while, I didn't know how to respond to him, other than, yeah, you're right. And then I figured out as I got deeper and deeper and deeper into the topic, I said, you know what, Bill, you come to me and you always say you've drank the Kool-Aid. Man, this stuff is so good, I'm sucking on the ice. It creates an amazing opportunity to do what I, as a judge, thought I was going to do, which was to have an impact in people's lives in a very, very positive way. Yeah, we get the blame. Well, I'm going to say this, you say that, and we'll blame it on the judge because the judge has to make the decision. Drug courts allowed me to do something that I wanted to do, which is have a positive impact on people's lives. So as a result of that, we got to recognize with everything you've already heard this morning, and then the statistics I just gave you guys, it is a changing landscape. How many of you know that drugs affect the poor people in our society? Only the people of a certain racial, ethnic population. Only the people from a social, economic status, an educational status. You know what? I give more talks about saying, if you think drugs are a local problem that only exists in certain parts of our community, you need to wake up. If you think drugs are only a state problem, you're completely clueless. If you think drugs are only an American problem, get real. Drugs are a worldwide issue. Worldwide issue. And I'm proud to tell you, and I know this because I've served at the national board, I've been president of the state association. Texas is highly regarded in what we do. We've gone from the state of being tough on crime to being smart and tough on crime because new problems require new solutions. And that's why you guys are here, because there is some basis for taking what we get from drug courts in the generic sense to mental health courts to mental health dockets. Hopefully that's part of the reason that you are here, is to figure out there's got to be a better way. We know that what we are doing is no longer appropriate, is no longer working in every specific situation. As I told you, we live in a dangerous society. Well, those are the people we need to lock up. Because if people are high risk, a term that will resonate with some of y'all, they are likely to reoffend. If they are high risk because they just commit crime, we need to lock those people up. But if somebody has committed a crime and the basis for that crime stems from addiction or a mental health issue, then why are we sending them to jail? Why are we sending them to prison? I can guarantee you all we've done is send them to school so that they can become a better criminal. That's all we've done. That is not the answer. And if we know better, we got to do better. The first generation of research on drug courts from 1989 said, we don't know what this thing is. What are you guys doing? Does it work? Well, now going on almost 30 years, we know that they work, but we know that some work better than others. And so we'll get into a little bit of the breakdown because I'm going to get into standards. The problem is education. We got to let people know there's got to be a better way. You got to do it a little bit differently. So let's talk about drug courts, what they are and how they work. And I'm using it in the drug sense, in the generic sense, I should say. So we have a docket put together, and every week I go over the docket of people who are in my drug court program. Well, how do you decide who's in your program? Let me tell you. We look for people who are high risk, high need. High risk, meaning they're likely to reoffend. High need, meaning that they are addicted. Now, there needs to be a nexus to this. They are high risk because of their high need. Think about it this way, since we have some healthcare providers here. High need is like your diagnosis. High risk is like your prognosis. Because of your diagnosis, we know this is likely what's going to happen. Drug courts target a very specific population. High risk, high need. That's the population. We get more bang for our buck, if you will, because if we turn that person around, it enhances public safety, it saves money, it restores family. It's just a good thing. It really, really is. So with collaboration with I'm stealing Justice Guzman's term, collaboration from the defense bar, the prosecutors, probation, the courts, we get people who are assessed to say, is this the right person for the program? And we do have co-occurring disorders because sometimes people who are on drugs, guess what? Manifest some conditions which appear to be in the mental health world, and vice versa. What we have found as we get people off the drugs is that either they were misdiagnosed or incorrectly diagnosed. They didn't really have a mental health issue. They were hallucinating, yes, but it was because of the PCP. Imagine that. So every week I get a docket. I sit down with my team, which is comprised of me, my coordinator, prosecutor, defense attorney, treatment, probation, and quite frankly, anybody else who I believe can have a positive role on the team. I'm looking to adding, because we've been in existence long enough in Lubbock, a person who's graduated from our program. Because they see things a little bit differently than us. And what's unique about this team approach is, I tell people on my team, you're not on this team just to look good. You need to tell me what you're thinking. I need your perspective. You are the respective expert in your field. Talk to me. Talk to me. Now, the other thing I tell them is, this is not a democracy. I decide what happens. And it's not because of my ego. It's because I have judicial immunity. You got to hide behind the black robe. Why did y'all do that, Judge Reyes? See, we get blamed again. Judge Reyes, Judge Reyes. And so we meet, we staff, and we do that about an hour before court. Because this is on top of other things that I do, my court's at 4:45. People can come into the courthouse before it closes, and then we're there until we're done. And so I asked my team, okay, how's Betty doing? Betty's doing great. Awesome. We're going to talk about that. How's Joe doing? Joe's not doing so great. What's going on? And so I find out from probation what has been happening. And then there are two responses. There's a court response and there's a treatment response. The court response is, okay, if I'm going to sanction for a violation, what type of sanction would be appropriate here? Am I just going to chew on them and gripe on them a little bit? Or am I going to send them to jail for a couple of days to get them to realize we're serious about what we're doing here? And then I look to my treatment people and I'm like, tell me what's going on. Do we need to change their treatment plan? Do we need to do something different? Outpatient not working? Do we need residential treatment? You guys talk to me, tell me what's going on. And then we go into court and we put it into play. All right? So we know that they've got to be in court because that's the accountability part. It says down here that we meet, must appear regularly. We know that if you're meeting every week, that's fine. If you're meeting every other week, that's fine. If you're meeting less often than that, doesn't work. Doesn't work. We know that at staffing, if your entire team is present to fully discuss the issue, those are pretty successful courts. If you have the judge not there, or the DA not there, or the defense lawyer not there, the treatment people, success rates go down. If you are in court and your entire team is not there, success rates go down. We know that if you send somebody to jail and you send them to jail for a period exceeding 7 days, it starts to have a counterproductive effect. We know that if you're going to sanction somebody, you must draw the distinction between did they violate a proximal goal or a distal goal. A proximal goal is something that they can do now. You can come to court now. You simply didn't. Well, I didn't have a ride. Well, here's a bus pass. We sanction those more aggressively than it's a distal goal. Well, you used. Yeah, I did. Is anybody surprised? They're an addict. They've been in this program 2 weeks. You sanction those less aggressively because they're goals that they're not able to accomplish now, but the hope is that they will be able to accomplish them at some point in the future. Now, what we have found is that because this model has been so successful, it has been replicated in many different forms. We have the adult drug court, we have a DWI court, we have a reentry court, we have a juvenile drug court, we have a family drug court, we have a tribal healing court, we have a back on track court, which is basically at the college level that says, you know what, instead of just kicking this kid out of school, why don't we get them some help them get their diploma, help them graduate, help them change the trajectory of their life. We have them happening at the federal system. We have veterans treatment courts because those people who serve to protect our nation, one of the greatest injustices in my mind is that when they come back and they're struggling to transition back into the community and they do something that is because of their service to our nation, that we incarcerate them. Quick example, there's an argument at the house. Maybe somebody in the family calls law enforcement, neighbors call law enforcement and say, hey, you guys need to show up. There's a lot of bad stuff seems to be going on next door. And law enforcement is trying to calm down the situation, make it a little bit better. Sir, ma'am, calm down. They don't understand that the veteran is maybe having flashbacks. Maybe it's a traumatic brain injury, TBI, or PTSD. Veteran is not being responsive. And then the officer does what they're trained to do by saying, sir, ma'am, calm down or I'm going to have to arrest you. And when they attempt to do that, our veteran does what they've been trained to do, and they respond in kind. So now the domestic violence issue has been elevated to maybe assault on a public servant, et cetera, et cetera. So we lock them up. No, you don't. You don't. That is stupid. We honor those who serve and protect our nation by getting them the help that they need. So we know it's a successful and proven model. Here are terms of art. Like I said, in Texas, we call them specialty courts. Sometimes they're called problem-solving courts. Sometimes they're called therapeutic courts. And what I do when I have my court, because I want them to have the optics of something completely different, when I'm presiding over a criminal case, I'm on my bench, kind of elevated like I am here. And the person comes before me, and we're passing judgment. Okay? So I have here that you committed the offense of burglary of a habitation with, I don't know. When somebody comes into drug court, I handle the plea because there's some things I want to stress to them. And one thing that I stress to them is, you understand that a term and condition of your probation is successful completion of the Lubbock Adult Drug Court Program. Yes, I do. I know your defense lawyer's already explained this to you, but I'm going to put some things on the record. If you don't do what you're supposed to do, I'm going to sanction you. Yes. Those sanctions are everything from me griping at you to sending you to jail. Yes. You got to call the UA line every single day. Yes. You got to be in court every single week. Yes. You don't do those things, I'm going to put you in jail. You understand? Yes. I go over all that stuff. But this is how I end the plea. Court will accept the terms of the plea. And I want to congratulate you. Not everybody gets this offer to come into drug court. We're pretty picky. And I know that you're probably thinking, well, I've done this, I've done that, and I've got these issues. Well, first of all, we all got issues. Okay? You are part already of a very select group who's been given an opportunity to do something incredible. So I want you to understand that you're part of the elite. And I speak words of encouragement to them. And I say, thank you for having the courage to take this problem head on, because a lot of people choose not to. And then when I do drug court, I'm not at the bench. I'm down in the floor in front of them. They sit on the other side of the bar where members of the public would sit. But I'm on the floor as if I was picking a jury, conducting voir dire. And I do that because I want to stress to them visually, optically, that this is a whole different program. We're talking. I want you to tell me what's going on. We can't help you if you don't tell us what's going on. And I know you don't trust me. Guess what? I don't trust you. You're over here saying, yeah, you're the government. You're here to help me. Right. You're the judge. Right. You're going to help me, Judge. And I tell them, that's why we rely on the science. You're going to call the UA line every single day. And you're going to have to go and pee every time that thing says you got to go pee. And you're going to tell me, I'm not using. And when I got a positive drug test, I'm going to say, I don't believe you. I rely on the science. Now, here's the beauty of it. That's not a gotcha thing. When you tell me, Judge, I'm not using, use the science against me. And Judge, as evidence of the fact that I'm not using, my drug tests all this week have been clean. Use the science against me. Now, hopefully, as you go through this program, you're going to get to know me a little bit better. I'm going to get to know you a little bit better. You're going to start to maybe trust me. Maybe I'll trust you. With the idea that, we're going to run into each other. Lubbock is not that big. You shouldn't feel intimidated when you see me. You shouldn't feel intimidated when you run into the prosecutor. You shouldn't be intimidated when you run into all these people, because hopefully you learn that we're here to help you get better. That's what this thing is about. And the majority of them buy in. They do. Make sure that's the next slide here. Yeah. This is the cost from the Legislative Budget Board report that they kicked out a couple of years ago in preparation of the legislative session. It's expensive to incarcerate people. It's really expensive for juveniles. because they really just require a lot of attention. And, our kids, particularly nowadays, are having to deal with things at an age when their brain is not even fully developed. We got to help them. We really, really do. Do specialty courts save tax dollars? Absolutely. We do. Not only do we save the tax dollars for maybe not incarcerating somebody, an adult, $22,500. Look at the average cost for somebody to go through drug court in Texas. It's about $3,500. And then if a child is born not addicted to drugs, which is normally it's a term of crack baby, we just saved $250,000. Now that may not be reflected anywhere on a book. How do you do that? But I can guarantee you, every time we have somebody in my drug court who gives birth to a child who is healthy or who has been through my drug court and we learn about it because they gave birth to a healthy child, I email my commissioners and I say, I want to celebrate with you the fact that we had a healthy baby born to a drug court graduate or a drug court participant. And I say, FYI, we just saved Lubbock County $250,000. So when I come to you and I say, I need, don't tell me you don't have the money. I just saved you $250,000. Okay? Because of this, specialty courts have grown in Texas. The first one was in 1993, and I'm going to mention some folks here who they just credit is deserved. Judge John Crusoe out of Dallas was talking with Governor Perry, and Governor Perry pulled in Senator John Whitmire from the Houston area and Representative Jerry Madden from the Dallas area and said, hey, here's something I think we need to look at in Texas. And it has grown. It has really, really grown. So much so that legislation was passed. And in 2001, if your county had a population of basically 500,000, you were mandated to have a specialty court program. And then because of the success that was being reflected in 2007, if your population was 200,000 or more, you needed to have a specialty court. Okay? The issue, though, is because drugs don't just happen in big cities, they happen in rural parts of our state, we have a strong need for these programs to be replicated in the less populated portions of our state. That's what we're working on, hopefully, for the next legislative session. So I told you that these things work. Here's some evidence of that. If you graduate from the drug court program, 75% of them remain arrest-free, not even crime-free. They don't have any other interaction with law enforcement, okay? They do well. They go on to graduate. I have a if you guys are done reading that, I'm going to move on. I have a drug court graduate who went on to get their college degree, went on to law school, and is now a practicing attorney. Their life has dramatically different from the trajectory they were on initially. They get jobs. They return to their families. People get off welfare. And I'll tell you, and sometimes it's really, really hard. I tell people, bring your friends, bring your family. We're not trying to hide anything. And I had this lady bring her child. He was elementary school age. And she said, Judge, my son wants to say something. Well, you never know what they're going to say, particularly at that age. But I said, absolutely, ma'am, what does your son want to say? And this was hard. He said, Judge, I have my mommy back. Now, you're in the midst of this, and that's not what I expected the child to say. And of course, we're supposed to maintain our judicial temperament. But that got me in the gut. Really, really did. That's why we do things. That's why we do this. That's why, quite frankly, you do what you do. And if you're not doing it for that reason, maybe you reassess, maybe you reevaluate, maybe you remember the days of why you wanted to get into this area of your expertise. Maybe you had those theoretical, philosophical visions in college of, I want to change the world. You have an opportunity here. You really, really do. Now, I tell people when I train on this, good intentions are not enough. They're not enough. You got to know what you're doing. And if you're not doing it right, then you're going to mess people up. It's no different than, you go to a doctor, they don't know what they're doing, they're going to mess you up. You hire a bad plumber, they don't know what they're doing, they're going to mess you up. Okay? Same thing here. We have standards, and the Specialty Courts Advisory Council, in conjunction with other leadership in our state, has mandated that you have to implement the drug court standards, which have been written by the National Association of Drug Court Professionals, no later than September 1st, 2019. Now, what's interesting is these talk about adult drug courts, okay? Doesn't talk about family court, doesn't talk about all those other disciplines that I showed y'all, but there's cross-applicability. And so we have a self-assessment tool that has already been mailed out to all drug courts. We're now in discussion about sending those to the other drug court models, because the very first one says your target population. We target high risk, high need. Well, that should be your criteria, whether you have a juvenile drug court or a family drug court or a veterans treatment court, whatever. It doesn't make any difference. So that's going to be what's happening. Now, what's that mean to me? You know what I found out in researching this? Because I don't know mental health courts. I don't. I know drug courts. Okay? One of the websites that I'm going to give you had this on the website about this framework, behavioral health criminal justice framework. And what I noticed in looking at this was, look, low criminogenic risk, medium to high criminogenic risk. It's on both sides. And I thought, that's kind of what we do in drug court. Are you high risk or are you low risk? If you're low risk, you're not who we're looking for. And then they broke it down into the next level was your substance abuse. Okay? Are you high need or low need? Or are you just an abuser? And I'm thinking, they stole our research. But then you guys built something. There's a third layer here, a third level that talks about mental illness in this chart. And those who are on the left side of it are generally the ones that you don't send to prison, okay? They may be the soccer mom who has an accident, gets addicted to an opioid, and she's not a criminal. She's never committed a crime before. She's the type that she doesn't even jaywalk. And you're going to send her to prison because she now was arrested for possession? No, that's not what you do. The ones on the right are your high risk, high need, your extreme right. Let me just do this. This is what we use in drug court. It's the ARC, Annals of Research and Knowledge. And at the very front of this, we have what we call the Johari window. Are you high risk, high need? High risk, low need? Low risk, low need? It's the exact same thing that was on the framework. And then this thing looks at everything from pre-arrest options to reentry. Because if you think that these people are not going to come back to society, you're wrong. They are. So what can we do pre-arrest? What can we do when they come back? And then the different programs, depending on what you're seeking to accomplish, fit in different squares. Here you see the high risk, high need, and you see drug court over here, and you see mental health court, because there are some jurisdictions that do have this. High risk, high need, drug court, mental health court. And what we have found along this, I'm trying to remember the term, sequential, whatever. I mean, see, that's not my language. You're figuring out, where is this program going to be more effective? Is this a pre-adjudication, pre-sentencing option, or is it post-adjudication, post-sentencing? The other thing that I found out was this. This was a lead case planner bringing together several of the stakeholders. Well, we got housing issues, so you find a specialized housing provider. We have parents, so we need children advocates to come in. That was on this website. So look, this is number 8 of the standards that I was telling you about. We are required to have a multidisciplinary team. And I want you to look at the last thing. Yeah, we have the judge and all this stuff, but look here, anyone else needed. Anyone else needed. That's the beauty of this model, is you can replicate it at your local level. What works in Houston may not work in Lubbock. What works in Lubbock may not work in Dallas. What works in Dallas may not work in Texarkana. You adapt it to what your county needs. These are some websites that you're going to get, so you don't need to worry about writing them down. This is if you want about drug courts. This is a great website for mental health stuff. I made some calls and was educated on the csjusticecenter.org, and that framework I took from the ones that are not highlighted in yellow, or maybe rephrase that. Go to the yellow, and then it gives you all of these when you start clicking on specific windows. Okay? Now, I'm about done here. What I want to tell you are about 2 conversations. Well, one conversation I had and something I came across this week, and then I thought, I got to use that in this presentation. When I had an opportunity to sit down and visit with now Secretary Perry, formerly Governor Perry, he says, you know, Ruben, we are saving a lot of money. In fact, Texas, I think, now has closed 6 prisons because we look at alternatives, options for criminal justice, okay? He says, and that's a good thing. But the better thing is we're saving people's lives. And you know what the truly awesome thing is? I said, what is that, Governor Perry? He said, we're saving people's souls. That's what we're doing. That's really what this is about. So with that, I want to read you something that I came across this weekend. Oh, that's my last slide for sure. Okay. So here's the deal. There's a book, and I've not read it, but I heard this quote from a speaker that I was listening to. The senator from Nebraska, Senator Sass, has written a book called Them. And he talks about the divide because we have such a loss of civility in our community. And he notes that the American life expectancy for the 3rd year in a row is going down. For so many years it was going up, people were living longer. Now it's changed. People are living less. And this is how, he has a quote, and this is what I want to read because I want to get it right. So what is the culprit for this diminishing life expectancy in our nation? The culprit, suicide and alcohol, drug-related overdoses. We are simply killing ourselves, both on purpose and accidentally. These aren't deaths from famine or poverty or war. We're literally dying of despair. So if I leave you with anything, I leave you with this. Do not underestimate what you're doing for a living. Do not underestimate the impact that you have on people's lives. The other thing that we've learned about drug courts is that incentives work better than sanctions. Imagine that. If you tell people, you know what, you're okay, you'll make it. You don't have to do it by yourself. Because they've heard the other. You're a screw up. You messed up again. My gosh, I'm sorry you were born. When you tell them the other, it feeds them. It really, really does. Interestingly enough, it feeds me too. I love it. I love it. Please realize you have an opportunity to save souls. Take advantage of that. We're tired. Problems are tough. So what? We just got to get new solutions. We got a lot of smart people in this room. Okay? Come together, figure it out, put it into place, and let's do what we've always done. Necessity is the mother of invention. The task is there. We're losing 176 Americans every day to opioid overdose. If we know better, we got to do better. So let's do that. All right? Thank you all very much.